Hi, Chelsea. Let's take a look here. All right. This is looking pretty good. I forget what I told you last time, but I'll assume that I told you to go ahead and spline. Um, and we'll take a look at the spline and what's going on. So this week is going to be a week where I'm going to talk a lot about spacing, and I'm going to do a lot of drawings to kind of show you what I mean. Because when I watch this play, it feels like a lot of the spacing is kind of even. Like maybe I think we can kind of push it to be, and it's gonna make it like stronger. I guess that's the easy way to say it. So from here, you have your contact pose here. I want to see this foot be flat, right? Like 2 frames later. Really make that like slap down on the ground, because if you look at like this, like when somebody's walking, they're not gonna, unless they're doing a very specific personality walk, they're not going to keep their weight on their heel. They're going to get that foot planted as soon as they can, you know, and quickly. I would also encourage you, maybe, I don't want to like derail you or anything, so if this seems like a lot, then don't worry about it. But I would encourage you maybe to make the stride just a touch wider. It feels a little narrow to me, and in order to do that, you may have to bring down your center of gravity a little bit, or you may have to like open up the hips a little bit more, like rotate them open. But I think you could stand to bring this foot back, because what that would do is it would also help like this straighten out a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but maybe a little straighter than that. Yeah, so slap that foot down in like 2 frames. Okay, so let's talk about spacing of stuff. So one of the examples I can use is the foot. I'll switch color to yellow and we'll zoom in here. I'll give you 2 examples of how to watch for your spacing, and then we'll talk about where it can be applied elsewhere. But how come this is not advancing anymore? Okay, for this I'm going to turn on ghosting. I'm going to use a different color. So if I'm watching, like, let's say the ankle. Let's say I'm watching the ankle spacing here from this to here to here to here to here to here. I'm going to guess where it is here. I'm just going to say it's like there maybe. So now that we're in spline mode, it's all about spacing and arcs. That's what I really want to pay attention to. So one thing that I think is starting to make itself become a little apparent is how even all this spacing is. Like all those circles are almost the exact same distance from each other, right? As that foot moves from the rear pose to the front pose. And that is going to make your animation look kind of soft, right? And it's not going to have the greatest appeal. It kind of betrays the computer a little bit, because people really can't or don't move like this in real life. So some of the spacing I would suggest, man, it's weird how it turns my yellow green. I don't know what color to use. Anyways, let's say white. It's fine to have, and I'm just going to do ticks. I'm not saying like this is where you need to place your ankle. But what you kind of want is for your spacing to be tighter on the ends, and then for it to start having like bigger and bigger distance on it. And then when it gets, you know, to the front, it starts like tightening up and getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I don't know if, I think, you know, so a spacing like this where it kind of lingers more on the back part of the pose, and then it's going to kind of like zip through the passing pose a little bit quicker, and then linger a little bit more right before the plant. That kind of thing, I think, is gonna really help you. So pay attention to spacing on, like, especially your ankle or foot movement through space, since that's like such a big move. I'll show you where else maybe it can be applied, is maybe here on your side-to-side motion from the front. From the front view. Oh, that's a terrible color. We're going to go with red. It's kind of a judgy color, but I don't want you to feel judged. Let's not get judgy. What is this white? I hate it. Is there a way I can change this? Sure. Blue. That's great. Again, if I'm kind of tracking the left edge of this side-to-side motion, it's fairly evenly spaced. And that's something that the computer will give us and that we need to kind of design out of there. It really is kind of like you want to design your spacing on all these moves, or at least consider it, at least make sure that it's doing what you want. So a couple things. One of the things is that whenever you hit your most extreme version of this, like when it hits its far left spacing, it kind of instantly changes direction to go back the other way. So one of the things you can do with the spacing is have it be faster, and then as it gets closer to its leftmost thing, then you start increasing the spacing on the way out, and that'll make it feel like kind of zips, rests, and zips back. You know what I mean? So at this stage in your animation, this is really what we want to be focusing on and paying attention to, with like every part of the character in every view. You know, I can feel that same kind of spacing, like not that same kind of spacing, but that there's some spacing issue with the arms, especially in the front pose, maybe in the side pose. Yeah, it looks better considered in the side pose, but it still kind of looks even and maybe this is just my taste, it still kind of looks even on the arms. So let me get to a different part of the cycle so I can make these notes and they won't be crazy. So let me find like maybe the extreme. Okay. So here we're coming forward, right? And all that looks really even, and then all of a sudden it kind of like, it doesn't linger at the extreme at all and just starts to come back. And even like this spacing is like on the way forward, it's like even, and then a big gain, and then it's kind of even with the same gain that it just had again. So just pay attention to this stuff. You can fix this with the curves or whatever, however you want to fix it. But this is all super even spacing, and then it changes direction without kind of like having the spacing stack up and come to a halt. And then, wow, that was a big zoom out. Okay, we're going over here, and I'm looking at like the spacing of what's here. I'll back up here. So I'm looking at the spacing. Let's look over here on the right arm. Like if I'm just looking at like where this edge of the arm is, it's like traveling in, and then it kind of holds, goes in just a touch more, and then it goes out. I'll start tracking it up here, and then it goes in, out, out. So and then it goes in again. And like if we see the jump from here to here, that's small, but then the very next one is kind of like a big jump out here, right? So when body parts on your character kind of are doing in and out and jumping and doing stuff like this, that's when we play it, you'll feel that in the arm. Like you feel like there's little hitches and bumps, you know what I mean? And that's just because the spacing is not like, has not been like fully considered yet. So take a look at all that stuff now that you're splining. That's going to be a major focus. And, you know, all that stuff holds true too for like the center of gravity, which is, you know, my favorite thing to talk about, besides clavicles. But watch the height here you know, all of this is like kind of even, and then it kind of bumps up. And it's like when you did the bouncing ball exercise, you know, like you really want it to like, it's not quite like the bouncing ball. Okay, so if I did the spacing on a bouncing ball, it would be up here, here, and then we're gaining spacing as it gains speed. But on a bouncing ball, like let's say this is our ground, when it hits the ground, it's gonna like bounce up this high, almost equal to where it was on that ground, right? But with a person walking, it's similar to that, but they're gonna like slow down a little bit here on the bottom, and then go up, and then slow down here. But the spacing on these transition moments is going to be much bigger. Like, you know, there's going to be more frames here at the bottom, and it's going to ease out of that, and then there's going to be more frames here at the top. And when you animate stuff, you especially want to think about, like, oh, if the character is taking a step, it's going to be a lot easier for that character to let his weight fall than to push his weight up. So you may even want fewer frames in how long it takes the character to go down than it does for them to push it up. But in this walk cycle, you know, it's not going to be very pronounced. It's not going to be very extreme. That's a little like next level, but it's just something to think about. Like, it's a way to think about, like, well, what should my curve be? What should my motion be on the translate Y up and down? Again, I'm looking at this with a very like a very watchful eye, a very critical eye. I don't want you to feel like I'm saying, like, you're not in a good spot. You're not exactly where you should be. You're exactly where you should be. You're in a great spot. But now you're just at the stage where this is the kind of thing that you want to pay attention to. Because I don't know if you feel it, but when I watch this played, now that it's blind, I really feel that even spacing and that computer interpolation kind of taking charge. And so you need to get in there and wrestle control back into your capable artistic hands, you know. But it's all looking good, and I really appreciate the 3-panel view, and I appreciate the progress you're making, and keep up the great work. All right, see you in class.